How many of you guys actually have a bucket list? I bet none of them. No, one or two? Well, that's good. I never thought about it myself. I even watched the movie and never thought about it. Yeah, I can do that. Watch the whole movie and not get the point. We're moving in, as we move in the next few weeks, we're going to start talking about what we advertised at the very beginning, the adventure. And this part of it's going to be interesting, and I'm looking forward to it. And I was out last week, and Russell asked me if I'd come host this morning. I said, sure, it's nothing to introduce you. Glad to. He goes, no, I want you to tell them a story. I said, sure, what are you doing? And he said, well, just tell them about what you've been doing, in life for fun. And I said, well, what, are you not going to talk this morning? Because I got this exceptionally long list. From what it comes from, I'm not really sure. Some people say it's in my design. I'm going to be looking for that when we get to that part of it. And other people, don't care. And me, for myself, I like to have stuff going on. So I'll just tell you what I've been doing, mostly for fun. After Altel, we started an investment business, but anybody can start an investment business. So we got that started, and that was fun. That didn't take too long. I got a great partner, and he loves doing that every day, so that takes care of itself. And then another partner wanted to start a consulting and investment business, and he wants to do that every day, and I said, that's fine. So, I'll just help him a little bit, and he's got a great team, and I don't have to do anything about that. And then another partner and I, we decided that three of us total, we decided that we would get into the racehorse business because that's exceedingly stupid, right? And no one can be successful in the racehorse business. Everybody knows that, right? You can't do it. So we decided we'd buy 3 claiming horses. That was 40 horses ago. And we've been moving up in quality. And I think we got a real chance by 2011. I think we got a real chance. We're having great fun with that. The other thing we started doing was we started a coffee business because over in Rwanda where I was doing some stuff, they have this, they had 2 primary exporters. And it's funny, they're like European, and they kind of always paid the same price. And that's 40% of the cash revenue generated into the country. Every penny is like over $1 million into the GDP, and this is a GDP of 150 million cash dollars. So how many of you would love one percentage point of revenue growth, in your business? It can mean a lot. So we decided that no sane person would do that. So we'd start a coffee exporting business in Rwanda. And then we needed a plant. So then we bought a plant. But we bought a plant that was in the flood zone. So it's actually staffed at night with people with buckets. But they love it because they got something to do and we pay them. So now we dry coffee during the day after we keep the water off of it at night. And what was the most interesting part of that was when we went to settle up, we bought this thing out of bankruptcy. That should have probably been a hint, And we bought it out of bankruptcy, and the bank and the bankruptcy judge wanted us to send the money to 2 different accounts. We're like, well, don't y'all need to get together on that? We just need to send 1 check, not 2. We got that worked through. We got all that worked through, and we finally got closed. We got closed about 3 o'clock yesterday morning. So now we're the proud owners of coffee washing station business. And we saw prices rise in Rwanda 3 times just because we were there as an honest actor. Just, we would pay the market rate and then we'd move it up and they'd all squeal. And I liked the way that sounded and we raised the price again. And we had a good time. We had a great time. And now what everybody's telling me is that nobody can export coffee out of Congo. Nobody can export coffee. So I don't think that's true. Now, maybe nobody can export it, this year. Or maybe nobody can export it, profitably. But, as the fighting subsides and as they kind of shrink the Lord's resistance army and the children's soldiers and the blood diamond people, as they kind of shrink them into a tighter territory, don't you think commerce should follow the army in? So basically, we've made the decision that we won't stand behind the United Nations. We don't trust their military skills. But we'd stand behind the Rwandan, Ugandan, and Congo army in a joint operation. And so, whatever they can clear, we'd be willing to go in and buy coffee beans and maybe help them get some trees planted and stuff. So y'all are going, man, this is suicidal. I actually just think it's kind of fun. And I think we'll make a difference with it. But all that's kind of work stuff, and that's what I'm doing, and I'm enjoying it. But then the thing Russell wanted me to tell you about was a few weeks ago I got a letter in response to an inquiry I'd sent off from the premier of a certain set of islands in the Caribbean, because if I told you where it was, you'd know where the treasure was. And I still can't tell you exactly where. But I'd been on a vacation. And like every vacation, it used to be vacations, we'd shop wireless stores, right? We'd send the kids in and they, oh, Dad, not enough. I said, look, there's a Sprint store, let's shop it. I don't do that anymore, don't go into them. But we were on a vacation and we were in the islands and we were supposed to be relaxing. So, I sat on the beach for the requisite first half of the day. And I said, I can't take it anymore, I'm gonna go for a walk. So then I started finding stuff like along the beach, and we started doing a little history, and we started reading. There'd been a shipwreck there. There'd not only been a shipwreck there, there'd been dozens of shipwrecks there. In fact, there'd been 300 shipwrecks near this island, because it's a particularly low island, it's a particularly nasty set of waters around it, and it goes from 30 feet deep to like 30,000 feet deep in a mile. And so they coming in from the east, sailing west. Is it longitude runs up and down? They couldn't sort their longitude until like the 1800s because they didn't have a Harrison's watch until then. Anyway, so they'd be 200 to 300 miles off. The very best navigators would be 200 to 300 miles off on the east-west. They knew where they were north-south. So they're trying to sail into Puerto Rico, and they come plowing into this island time after time after time. Is anybody else intrigued? So then I start doing it. Well, of course, the first thing you got to do is you got to get a team. Right, so I found these two folks that were living there, and they weren't making really a day's wage, and they just needed a little extra love. But he was a former SEAL in the Philippine Navy, and she was a master diver, and she's a great researcher. So we start sending them to the libraries, and then before you know it, then we just hire them, and now they're researching full time. And then all the stuff's in Spanish. So Mike High's daughter, Mike in here? Hey, Mike. No. Mike High's daughter's fluent in Spanish, but she's never been to Spain. I said, for your college graduation, I'd like to give you a trip. You what? I said, yeah. She'd worked for me as an intern for a couple of summers. I said, I'd like to send you to Spain. Oh! And here are the libraries that you need to go to. And she's a bulldog. Now, she's a bulldog. I knew we were onto it when she goes in and she's meeting she just pesters and pesters. They keep sending her away. You can't go in there, you can't go in there. And she keeps coming back, And so we're looking for a certain manifest. So, I'm boring you and I'm eating your time. But anyway, I'm going to talk today. You're going to have to go brief. So, we know that we're making progress when the director of the museum invites her up to his office, and he sits there and he's all professional and stern, and he speaks to her in Spanish, and she's holding her own. And he says, well, what are you looking for? She says, well, I found this, and I found this, and I found this, and I'm looking for the manifest of such and such. And he turns around and he goes, well, I keep it right here behind my desk. Now, I hadn't quite figured out how to get that. We will. I'm not talking about stealing or nothing. I just want to borrow it for a little bit. I just want to cross-reference it, I think is the word that we're looking for there. We're still trying to figure out how to actually to do it. So then I said, well, I know how to do it. Well, I'm just going to write to the premier of the island chain and ask him for government sanction as the research team. You like that one? So we form a publishing company called Sea Tracer Publishing Limited, and it's headquartered in the Virgin Islands. And this is a business that has put in for a request with the government to be the chief researcher. Now, here's the deal I made him. I actually wrote him a personal letter, and I said, here's the deal. Everybody's robbing you blind, and everybody knows it maybe but you. Now, here's what I'll do. I don't want one thing. I don't want to keep one thing. Anything we find, you can have. I just want to find it. I just want to put the pieces together and find it, and then you can have it. In fact, you can have people with us the whole time. So anyway, we missed the season. There's only 2 or 3 months when the tides and the water are right where you can actually do this, and we missed it. But we're still working on that. In fact, he and I were corresponding this month. We're still working on exactly what that would look like. So he's asked for references. So I figured, why have I been giving money to politicians for 25 years? For references, I guess, right? So I'm trying to figure out how to get references. If anybody's got any stroke with anybody, give me one. So anyway, that's what we're doing. Why am I doing that? It's not for money. I don't want the money, and it's because it's a fascinating history that's being looted, and somebody's standing by watching it be looted, just like somebody was standing by watching coffee farmers get looted because there were two guys and they always traded at the same price. All right. What wiring is that? I have no idea, but I think all that stuff's good fun. Here's the point. Doesn't matter what you think I think's fun. If you're not engaged in something fun, I'll promise you, because there have been seasons in my life when I hadn't been able to do it. If you're wired like me, and you may be wired differently, you may be like, I feel best when the fire's burning and I'm sitting at home and I don't have to worry about any adventure. That's fine. That may be where you're happiest. And then there are other people that makes dang near suicidal, right? And you need something going on in life other than you've been a faithful husband. You've worked hard with your kids. You've engaged with your kids and you've loved them and you've taken the stuff you've learned here in the last few years and you've applied it. And you've been faithful. You've been a faithful servant at work. You've done a good job. You've been a good steward. You've been faithful to what's been given to you. And is Razorback football really the only outlet after that? After you've kind of gone down the checklist, right? I mean, is watching somebody else do something all that's left? No. It may be woodworking. It may be playing guitar. It may be, I don't care what it is, maybe playing the piano. Whatever it is that you've got going. Of course, Russell, I don't know what you're going to say, but I hope you hit these notes, something like that. I would strongly encourage you to find something that, you don't have to do it every day, but that you can get excited about that, frankly, no one else can do. Everyone else says you can't do. That's my kind of bucket list idea. That's what I'm doing. Y'all do what you want to do. Russell?
Buried treasure, sunken treasure, not buried treasure. That does sound like a good thing on a bucket list. That's why I wanted to share that with you. Just a couple of things before we go this morning to let you know. Last week we offered this 3-session Explore. A bunch of you guys took us up on this offer. It's a standing offer. Some of you guys have contacted us this week, said, I thought about that. I would like to go through there. So if you'd like to, come up here afterwards, tell your small group leader or tell one of our black shirt team guys, and we'll get you hooked up. Somebody'd love to take you through Explore. Second thing, this is session 8 of the Great Adventure. Session 9 will not be next Wednesday. Next Wednesday, we're off for Thanksgiving. So enjoy that, and we'll see you 2 weeks from today for session 9. All right, let's get going this morning. First thing, we ended last week kind of this journey, this 3-week journey of beginning with the end in mind. We said it was the end of the end was doing that. And I just really like to say a quick congratulations about that, because I'm telling you, that puts y'all in a rare population of, frankly, I think anybody in America, and especially guys, of ones who have taken a deliberate, intentional, informed effort at trying to just understand what happens all the way out through life and all the way out into eternity. And even if you still have some unresolved issues and some questions about that, and you should, we all have questions, we all have doubts, but just taking that journey puts you in a very select group, because most men that you know in this life, and you'll know your entire life, from family to friends to coworkers, will never do that in their entire life. They'll never consider that. It'll weigh on them, but they'll just never go there. Either they don't know how or they're just not willing to, but for whatever reason, y'all have done that, and I'd just like to say congratulations there. So as we go forward, though, just a real quick review on our wiring, just so we make sure where we are. We said in our wiring, it kind of, started at birth and life and death, and the way we were going to go through it was backwards. We were going to start with the end in mind, then move to our life, our pursuits. That's what we're starting today, and then we'll finish this year kind of with our design. And so that's what we're doing. And so what have we learned so far? I'd say a couple of things. First, that just the real adventure turns on how well we're wired. On that wiring diagram, guys, that's a very important thing that our adventure is going to turn on. We're either going to be wired right and have the adventure, or wired wrong and miss the adventure. Number 2, that there's just 2 ways to go through life in general. The first way is I'll just call it the reactive life. And it's kind of that comparing and competing life we've been talking about. And it's just full of all kinds of unhealthy pressures. And basically, here's what it is. You're just unclear about the way forward. You don't have that clear end in mind that we've been working on. And so rather than looking forward, you're looking around. and you're just letting everything around you influence which way you're going. And it's not a very good way to live, because it always ends up, that's what you're doing, is you're comparing yourself to other people. And whenever as guys we compare ourselves to other people, that at the same time we're competing with those people. It just kind of comes with it. We can't look and see how we're doing with somebody else to not kind of feel like we're competing. And really, when it's just vague like that, we're not just competing with that guy or that guy. In a real sense, we're competing with every guy. That just is going to wear us out, because we're never going to get that. And that's not a new thing. I think throughout human history, that's been just one of the predominant ways that guys live. And just to show you that, I can go back and show you in writing where 3,000 years ago, a guy that's considered very wise, in fact, the Bible calls him the wisest man who ever lived, King Solomon, he wrote these words about this exact thing, about guys that he saw living the reactive life. Look at these words in Ecclesiastes 4. It says, I have seen that every labor and every skill which is done is the result of rivalry between a man and his neighbor. Every labor and every skill. This too is vanity and striving after wind. So it's nothing new, but just because it's old doesn't mean it's good. Because what we want to move to is this life that's the proactive life, the one we're envisioning and we're enjoying. And rather than unhealthy pressures, we have healthy pursuits. And so rather than looking around, like what we've been doing the last 3 weeks, we are laser clear on where we're headed on the way forward, and we head there. And from time to time, that's going to put us on different paths from other people. You know, I love that line in the bucket list clip. But, you know, he said, you know, make a fool of myself. He says, it's never too late. And I think sometimes we're afraid to take the path that we know we're called to, and we just feel like pursuing, because the world's going to somehow think we're weird. And I'd say, that may be a good marker that you're actually on your path and not looking around. So that's a great way to go. And Ephesians 5 gives us kind of this warning we looked at the first week of not living the proactive life. It just says, therefore, be careful how you walk. And the Bible, how you walk is just how you live your life. So be careful how you live your life, not as unwise men, but as wise, making the most of your time, because the days are evil. Without a clear way forward, focused on that, just looking around, is just going to steal your time from you. So that's what we've learned so far. If I said what we covered so far, you know, we're really, the whole thing's about the great adventure, right? Living the great adventure. I'd say what we've learned so far is you can kind of break it down, first of all, into 4 adventures. We've talked about that. The family adventure, the noble adventure, the man adventure, and the God adventure. And then breaking down the great adventure even further, we've seen that you can really break it down into just 3 questions. Who am I? Why am I here? And where am I going? And then the final breakdown is really breaking down to, I just call it kind of 2 great truths. I just call it never alone and always faith. You're never going to live any of these 4 great adventures alone. You're going to need your family or your friends, even coworkers, or with God. It's just, you're never going to live that alone. You're just never going to get the great adventure that way. And it's always going to take faith. I hope I've gotten you not just to believe that that's a truth, but to actually get excited about that. That I would get up every morning with just all the eagerness and energy and even fear sometimes that comes of knowing today I'm going to be out there on faith. It's a great way to live in life. It's a whole lot better than the opposite, which is just to let the fear run your life. All right, so here we go forward this morning. We've kind of finished with the death zone we talked about, and some of you guys, that whole metaphysical thing was the death zone. You were sucking some oxygen, but we climbed that summit. Now we've come back down the mountain a little bit. We're kind of at advanced base camp again, getting ready to set out for the summit of kind of the pursuits of this life. And this next exercise, what we're going to do today, I've got a pretty bold term I'm going to call this. What we're about to do is the most important practical project an adventurer can ever work on. And I know that just sounds good to y'all who've been saying, when are we going to get real? When are we going to get practical? Well, we're going to do it this morning. And we're going to do it kind of in just a way, just so you saw that bucket list. We're going to write down some dreams, some goals, and we're going to do it in a very intentional way that gets us to the great adventure. Okay? Lee Iacocca talks about just the discipline. He says the discipline of writing something down is the first step toward making it happen. So if we're going to make the great adventure happen, we need to write it down. There's a lot of power in that. Get a lot of studies that show that just writing down your goal has an exponential factor on the likelihood that you'll actually reach it. They did a study with Harvard Business School graduates, and they found out that the only ones 10 years after they'd graduated, and frankly it was a small percentage, the only ones that would really be considered successful after this great education they'd had were the ones that had specifically written down their goals. So it's important to do that. It just breathes life to it. And rather than writing down goals of just something that we're going to get, okay, I want to write down what I want out of life. Where we're going to go more, I think, is more better classified as just, I want to write down what I want to become. Not just what I want to get. That's where we're headed. And it's really going to be for us kind of a North Star. You can see in your notes, we call that your North Star. And what we're working towards this morning is this thing I've been promising, this life focus chart, this little business card side thing that opens up that you can carry in your wallet and you can use it, guys. This is going to be a navigational instrument. Okay, so now we're clear about the end in mind, or at least we're still processing, but we realize that if we don't have the end in mind, we're not going anywhere good. But then how do you get there? Remember I talked about base camp? When you leave base camp on the great mountains, almost immediately, you can't see the summit anymore. Because now you're in the climb and you just can't see it. And so even though you were clear about the end, sometimes in the pursuit, you need a navigational tool to make sure you're on track along the way. And that's what this is going to be. That's why we call it a North Star. You know, the most sophisticated navigational tool now is a GPS. A lot of us have in our car. You've seen them. We all know about a GPS. But it just tells you exactly where you are. And some of them will even give you a map where you want to go. Some of them will even talk to you about that. But before GPSs, compasses were kind of the navigational instrument. And a compass has been around since the 2nd century. And it's really, there's a needle in the compass that just points in a consistent direction. For us in the northern hemisphere, it points north. And though we may not be heading north, because we know we got this frame of reference. It's always pointing north. And we know where we want to go in relation to north, we can use that to get us there. Before compasses, though, we had the North Star, Polaris, celestial navigation. And I just thought, just to tell you guys, just to really put it in terms you'd understand that we really are getting practical here today. I thought, well, why don't I just make sure that everybody knows if they walked out tonight and there weren't clouds and they could see the stars, they knew how to find the North Star. Because I can show you that real quickly. Let me show you on this diagram here. The North Star is easily found if, first of all, you find the most commonly recognized constellation in the heavens, which is the Big Dipper, the one down there at the bottom. Okay, it's part of the Ursa Major constellation. And so most nights you can see the Big Dipper if you can see the stars. Find the last 2 stars in the Big Dipper and draw a straight line. That's what that dashed line represents. And the first bright star you come to is the North Star. Now, it's part of the Little Dipper constellation, but it's not a great way to find it because all the other stars in the Little Dipper are fairly dim. The really bright one is that. So a lot of times you can see the North Star, but you can't see the rest of it. So find the Big Dipper, draw a line, and go up there. Now, you can do that tonight. And it's a practical thing to do. In fact, I think it's a great thing. If you got kids, take your son, teach them how to do that. They need to know this. And you know, if you're a son and you're here, take your dad out and say, Dad, hey, let's go find the North Star tonight. It's a very practical thing because we need navigational tools that we can count on. The North Star is basically above the North Pole, kind of hovers around up there. And so wherever we are in the Northern Hemisphere, if we just head toward the North Star or head somewhere in relation to the North Star, we can get there. We have a navigational tool because the key to the tool is you got to know it and you got to trust it. Now you guys know how to find the North Star. I had a pretty profound experience on the very first attempt I made to climb a peak over 20,000 feet. It was the 3rd highest peak in North America. And I was kind of stepping out of my league a little bit. I really, even before I went, but in hindsight, I really found out that I wasn't quite qualified to just do that without a huge stretch. But even beyond just climbing it, I didn't have any money at that time. And one of the ways I would pay for expeditions is I would find people who wanted to go climb that peak also, or I could convince that they wanted to go climb it. And they would pay for it because they would hire me as a guide. And so that's kind of what happened. I set out to climb this 20,000-foot peak, having no idea how to climb it or really what was going on down there. And I convinced a bunch of other dudes to pay for it and come with me. And so we started on this kind of misadventure, and we started climbing, and it went pretty well. But we were using, on the mountain, we were using a very expensive, very sensitive navigational instrument using mountaineering called an altimeter. And back then there weren't GPSs or anything. It was a dial altimeter. And because on this particular mountain, it's just huge glaciers everywhere. And the difficult challenge is navigating the glacier. So at certain elevations, you'd have to change from one glacier to the other and move around. And if you did that, you could take the easiest route to the summit. The problem was I didn't know the altimeter well, and I didn't trust it well. And so we got off route. As the altimeter was working for a while, it was working great. And then we got off route, and we got some really dangerous territory. I mean, it was right on the edge there for a while. And I think, frankly, more than anything, it surely wasn't my brilliance. Just through good fortune, we not only made it out of there, we made it to the summit, and we came back alive. And I finally figured out what happened later. As we were moving up and getting high up on the mountain, it was kind of a fairly calm day when we were going up there, maybe 5-10 mile an hour breeze, which is pretty calm at that altitude. And all of a sudden, it was like we took one step, and we stepped into the jet stream, I found out later, because it was like sitting in front of a 50 mile an hour fan like that. And it was just constantly going. And when you do that, it's a big pressure gradient. And if we'd have looked at the altimeter, I found out later, we could have just seen that thing spin because it works off pressure. And the altimeter was just basically telling us wrong because we hadn't recalibrated it, and you can't know how to recalibrate in the middle of it. Anyway, it's a long story, but the whole point of that story is that because I didn't know that instrument and trust that instrument well, it let me down, and I trusted it, and we got way off navigationally. So this morning, what we're going to do is we're going to start the process of really building a navigational instrument that you know and you trust, because you are the ones that are going to put it together. Hopefully with your small group and with other guys and with some of the learning we're doing here, but having that is an important thing. So I thought on the road to that, I'd get started this morning by just giving you a couple of things on my bucket list, on my navigational instrument on here. And if you see up here, because what it really is you're just answering this question: before I die, I want to be, I want to do, I want to have, help, enjoy, leave. And so if I just told you some things on my list, I'd say, first, if I said, what do I want to be? Here's what I'd write down there: a true friend. You know, throughout my life, I've had some great friends. I mean, really have. From high school, college, all the way through my adult life, I've had some great friends. But I haven't been a very good friend at times. And I told you last week that if you could see any part of my life that's really shown change, especially over this last 10 years, with where Jesus Christ has just been recreating me, it's been in the area of relationship, just learning how to love others well, and particularly not just my wife and my kids, but friends. And that's what I want. I'm still working towards that. I feel like I'm still doing remedial work at times, but I want to be able to put on there, I want to be a true friend. What I want to have, what I want to do. I think for me, and we may make a stop off looking for treasure somewhere along the way, but what I want to do is I want to sail around the world. Just old school. I want to get in a boat with a mast and some cloth, shove off from the dock, and just wait for the wind to blow, and just head out. And if you know me, every part of that, from all the learning and the research that would have to go on, to the training, to getting prepared, to actually going out and living that adventure, every part of that from beginning to end is just right up my alley. And I've read books on it, I've watched shows on it. I've got a good friend that actually set the record of the solo sail around the world. But I'm not going to do it solo. Remember, you can't live the great adventure alone. And so I'm going to find a couple of guys, and somewhere along the line, I'm going to convince them, like, you know, taking people up a mountain that I didn't have any business climbing, that, hey, it'd be a good idea to go sail around the world with me. So we're going to do that someday. Maybe Scott will come. What do I want to, you guys want me to drop him anywhere in particular? Yeah, exactly. Somebody years from now will be looking for our manifest and want to dig up our sunken treasure. So we'll have something of value on board. What do I want to have? I just say at this point, because I just love kids. I mean, when you set me in a room or in a playground or in a school where kids are just going nuts everywhere and it's just chaotic and it's wild and there's just energy everywhere, it's like giving me a Valium. My blood pressure just goes down. I love being in that situation. Just the wilder, the better. And I've always kind of wanted an orphanage become of that. My wife says that I shouldn't hold my breath on that one. But so I'm kind of, what I want to have is grandkids. And I want to have a whole gaggle of them. We're not even close. My kids are grown, but they don't have, they're not married. So I'm kind of in rehearsal with that. I got nieces and nephews, and I got friends, some good friends with some young kids. But I just want to have, I'd say probably a lot of just kids in my life. There's something about them that I just love. What do I want to help? For me, that's easy. I just write down their top of the list. I want to help entrepreneurs. One of the most powerful forces on the planet is an entrepreneur. And it's not, they don't have to be businessmen, even though that's kind of the world that I like working in. I've known entrepreneurial politicians. I've known entrepreneurial teachers. I've even known entrepreneurial pastors. But the guys I love are these entrepreneurial business guys because they're shaping the culture and driving the economy. And the one thing, and I spend a lot of time with entrepreneurs, that's kind of part of what I do, and I love doing that. But one thing, if you'll find, if you kind of look at what's the making of an entrepreneur, and there's entrepreneurial schools, some really prestigious ones around the country, even around the world. And the one thing you find from academia is the one thing that entrepreneurial schools don't produce, for the most part, is entrepreneurs. Because entrepreneurs aren't just created or educated. Entrepreneurs, I think, are more begotten. Because if you really find, you talk to anybody that's an entrepreneur and you've drilled back, you'll find that they grew up usually in the family of entrepreneurs, or at least underneath some great entrepreneurs. And that's what happened to me. I grew up, my dad's one of the greatest entrepreneurs I've ever known. And I just grew up in that family. And I want to be able to give that same gift to other people who are emerging and existing entrepreneurs to just help them get better at that, because they're the ones that are going to shape this culture and shape this economy. And not only does it just make me come alive working with them because I like the way they think and I like the way they act, but it's had a huge influence doing that. What do I want to enjoy? All right, you guys have to follow my logic here just a second, because at the top of the what I want to enjoy list is something that would never, ever, ever make my what I want to do list. And here's what I mean by that. At the very top of the person I love most in this world's to-do list, my wife, and she's had this dream since she was in high school. I've heard about this since before we got married, that she wants to spend 1 month in Paris, France. And I don't get it. I mean, I've been there a couple times. It's okay, but it's not a place for dudes. It's got all this romantic and city of lights and things like that. But here's the thing. She, just even thinking about it, she just gets excited. And I can't wait to do that, because what I've learned in guiding is I can take people up a peak that long since I've lost any interest for. I maybe have climbed it 100 times. I've had peaks that I still take people up, that I'll do that. But if it's on the top of their to-do list and they're really going to enjoy it along the way, nothing brings me greater joy. I just love doing that. And to do that for somebody I love as much as my wife, I'm telling you guys, that month, there's no part of that's going to be just taking one for the team. It's not going to be sitting there like in prison just checking off the days, 29, 28, just marking on the hotel wall. It's not going to be what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to love every single minute of it, because she's going to love it. What I want to leave. All right, I'll just say this. If I just put 2 words in there, here's what I want to leave. I want to leave fully spent. All right? I don't want to have anything left in the tank when I go. And I'm not talking about just working like a dog till I die kind of thing. I have no desire to leave a big old pile of crushed rock that I spent my life taking a sledgehammer and breaking bigger rocks into little rocks. So at the end of my life, the whole world could go, "My, that's a large pile of rocks you've spent your life on, and we're very impressed with you." I could care less. That is nothing but the reactive life. I don't want to leave that. What I want to do is to pursue the end that I'm clearly have in mind with all the passion and all the energy right up until I take my very last breath. I want to be fully spent. because that's what brings me alive. Now, when I ask that question, and if you guys go out in the culture and ask this question, especially if you ask this question of the half of the culture that we relate best to, the men, and you said, what do you want to do before you die? Right? And you just ask that, you'd get an overwhelming response with a one-word answer. Vast majority of people just tell you one word. What do you want to do before you die? Retire. Retire. And it's just this vague thing. Almost like when we talked about heaven, you know, guys, like, yeah, of course I want to go to heaven. It doesn't sound that good, all the harps and cloud sitting and stuff, but it sounds better than the alternative, so I want to go to heaven. It's like, I want to retire. What do you want to do when you retire? I just want to retire. And there's just this vague thing about it, and it's undefined. They're not getting any thought. They can't wait to get there. But what they find, because I work with guys like this all the time, after years, a lifetime of working to get there, in a few months, a couple of years at the most, they haven't found some heaven on earth. They're in hell. Because they've got no purpose, they got no meaning, and they got no vision, which all equals, they got no life. It's not the place to go. You've got to have goals that you seek in life. Benjamin May's got this great quote. He just says, the tragedy in life doesn't lie in not reaching your goal. The tragedy lies in having no goal to reach. And that's what happens for a lot of guys. They're just out to retirement. Now, I'm not saying you may get to a point where you don't need to work for monetary compensation anymore. That's a whole different issue. But just to retire without a purpose and a meaning, that's not going to work. All right, let me give you some observations, because our goal here this morning is you're going to get in your group and you're going to start filling this stuff out. And pencil's fine, because I'm not expecting anybody to get this right to start with. We're just going to start putting these things down, getting the juices flowing. But we need some observations, so we just have some rails to run on a little bit. First, this is your opportunity to proactively craft your adventure rather than wandering through life, even as a success. I've said this, but I'm telling you, in this culture, I've got to keep saying this, because the whole culture's telling you what I'm about to tell you is a lie. They're trying to convince you in the opposite. Here's what I'm going to tell you. Being a success in life is never going to fulfill you. Success alone. Now hear me, every guy in here needs to be working hard to become a success. And you need to be trying to be successful all the way up until the day you die. But that's the entry fee to get into the great adventure, because on top of that success is where you start building the significance and the satisfaction. Just don't let somebody convince you, or the world convince you, that success is the end game, or you're going to end up in that retirement situation or worse. It's the starting line. Number two, be realistic but not restrictive about your dreams. We're talking about dreams, not fantasy. I don't want you to fantasize your life away, because what you'll find on the fantasy is you don't enjoy it along the way, and you don't enjoy it when you get there. Kind of like that whole retire thing. You know, you didn't enjoy the 30 years of just head down, butt up, thinking about retirement, and when you got there, you didn't like that either. That's a fantasy. All right, but don't think small either, because fear of failure causes a lot of people to just stay in your comfort zone. And so we need to put goals down on here that stretch us and excite us. I don't want goals on here that, frankly, you've already accomplished. I mean, the real achievers, and I've done some of this before, like I used to like to check things off a list. I'd do something, then I'd come back and write it on my list just so I could check it off. It's crazy, but now look, I know there's guys in here who have done that very same thing. And we're not going to do that. One of the great German philosophers and writer, Johann Wolfgang von Goethe, his name's longer than his quote, but it's a good quote. Whatever you can do or dream you can do, begin it. Boldness has genius, magic, and power in it. And I have seen that, I've experienced that. Just stepping out in faith, that's what he's talking about. Stepping out in faith has got a magic to it. Number three, find someone to help you dream. There's some guys in here that are going to have trouble putting something on this piece of paper, okay? You just are. Nobody's going to be able to just fill it out top to bottom, because frankly, this is a journey we're going on through all year. But there's kind of two things that are going to happen if you're just totally locked up, kind of got writer's block. Number one, your mind can think imaginatively like that and dream, but your reason won't let it. You're just kind of And I talk to guys like this, they won't even let an idea come up to even consider. They're just so fearful that, gosh, what if I can't control that idea? It's just an idea. You're leading your life. So let it come up. Your reason then can examine that idea and run it through all the proper filters and guys and your wiring and things like that. But you got to let that thing come out. So think more imagination at this point. But then there are a group of guys here that you're just not wired to think that way. You're just not. That doesn't mean you're not going to live a dream. You just may not be able to connect the dots or have that pop in your head. But the great thing is there's other guys that do. They just love thinking that way. And usually if that energizes them, they love thinking with guys who don't necessarily think that way and help them come up with ideas. And the best place for that's your small group. Because rather than just coming up with an idea, I could say to Scott, hey man, you ought to go find some buried treasure. And I don't know him from Adam, so I don't know if that'd fit him or anything. The guys in your small group have been getting to know you. This is where some of this is paying off. And so you say, I don't have any ideas. And the guy says, well, you know, one guy says, remember when you said this? And another guy says, remember when you said that? And then they come to kind of paint a dream picture. You go, that's perfect. I would love to do that. That's the power of having other guys in your life. Number 4, it's never too late to start the adventure. Anybody know how old Colonel Sanders was when he started the empire known as Kentucky Fried Chicken?
65.
That's right, 65 years old. It's never too late. The best living, breathing example of that for me is my dad. My dad is still out there pursuing dreams, and I've watched him over the last couple of years do that. And just get one of them he's working on just in the last few weeks. He had a dream that here at Fellowship Bible Church, the church he goes to and loves, would have, for the first time in its 30-year history, would have a Boy Scout troop. We found out that there was no reason, just no one had ever taken the initiative to do that. And my dad's had a lifelong love of the Boy Scouts. He's been deeply involved. It's one of the reasons I got involved and became an Eagle Scout. But my dad he said, that's my dream. I want to get a Boy Scout troop here. And he started working on that. And frankly, it was a real hard thing because he just ran into kind of roadblocks and disappointment and discouragement, just how we'd do that and navigate this whole thing. And he just kept working on it. And kept working on it. And then he started getting some great leaders around him who got the vision also, caught it from him. And they started working hard on that. And then just a few weeks ago, the culmination of all that, the very first meeting of our new scout troop just started here at Fellowship Bible Church. And my dad did that at, well, I won't tell you his old age, but he's older than Colonel Sanders was when he started Kentucky Fried Chicken. Because it's never too late. So don't have a pity party if somehow you said, well, I lost the first half of life, or I can't do anything anymore, because you're just going to lose so much. George Eliot just sums that up. He says, it's never too late to be who you might have been. 5th, young men will need to dream first half dreams primarily. And what do I mean by that? Here's the great thing about young guys in here. And I'm going to call young guys kind of anyone below 40, okay? So, sorry, you guys that just turned 40. There's people that look out at the generations, demographers and stuff, and they want to, there's the boomers and the Xers and the Yers and all this kind of stuff. But when they look at the 20s and 30s somethings now, they kind of call you guys in general, there's been all kinds of terms, they kind of seem to be settling this term called millennials, because you kind of came of age around the millennium. And here's the thing that they're telling us about that. And even the generation, we're even seeing it in the teen generation now, but the 20s and 30s in particular, we're doing the research, that you guys are laser focused on serving others and serving the world, which is a dramatic contrast, frankly, to my generation, which was so focused on serving ourselves. And it frankly just gives me great hope when the studies are just blowing us away, overwhelming. And I know we see a lot of stuff in the media that wouldn't lend you to believe that, but sometimes the serious people that are going to drive the culture aren't out there making a fool out of themselves in front of a camera somewhere. But when they really drill down, you guys want to make a difference in this world. And that's a great thing. Here's the advice I'd give you. Because I work with guys who are 60 years old or 70 years old even, who at 18 wanted to make a difference. And they've never done it. And when we start examining why, here's why. They never learned how to get stuff done. So if you're going to put on here some things of kind of the end game of what you believe you want to save the world, green energy or whatever it might be in there kind of thing, world poverty, you want to solve all those things, great. You better put in there some things on your bucket list to learn how to get stuff done. That's a whole different skill set. It's not education. You need some education. You need some wisdom. You need some experience. But you need to learn how to get stuff done. And let me tell you, there's only really one way to ever learn how to get stuff done. And that's to dig in and try to get stuff done. And the best way to do that, you can't just sit around and wait for it to happen. Nobody's going to make your dream come alive. You need to find somebody. Look out there, and it's usually going to be an older guy who's getting stuff done. Hopefully he's getting it done kind of in an area or a sector that you're interested in. You kind of say, yeah, that's close to what I'm trying to do. Even if you say, but he's only doing that for himself. I want to do it for others. You figure out a way to shadow that guy, serve that guy, be the assistant to that guy, just be his personal slave, whatever that takes. If you got to get a night job, a part-time job, in this season of life, that's what you need to do. Because if you come out of this season knowing how to get stuff done, you are going to change the world. If you don't, you're just going to be a bitter old man going, what could have been? Figure it out. 6, the younger you start this proactive process, the greater the return of reward rather than regret, the greater the adventure, and yes, even the greater the nobility. And I just say 2 words on that front. No shortcuts. Over and over in my life, I've just cut the legs out from underneath great adventures. Even when I kind of achieved what I wanted to achieve, it was much less fruitful and frankly, sometimes even was almost miserable even achieving my goal because I took shortcuts along the way. I still am tempted to do that. I mean, I'm kind of working on the next great adventure in my life right now, and it's just exciting me to no end. I can't even sleep at night. And every day, I have to tell myself, don't take a shortcut. Because the journey along the way is so much better if you take the right way. So that's just my advice on that. Okay, finally here this morning, because it's about time for you guys to participate here. We're going to all start today with a draft and finish men's fraternity in March with a solid plan. So today's a draft, okay? Turn the page in your book. We got a centerfold spreadsheet this week, which is just a worksheet. It's just a larger version of what you're going to have today. And the guys will have these on your way out. The team will be there. And if you don't get them on the way out, just blast through. We're going to come around to the different small groups and we'll hand them out. So don't bottleneck too much in there. And if you got to leave early, just grab them on the way out. Because we're not going to finish this today. And we can get you more if you lose it or need to try again. But this is your worksheet today. And we're going to even put a couple things on it right now, but I want to read just one quote from Henry David Thoreau. He says, if one advances confidently in the direction of his dreams, okay, so we got the end in mind, we're moving there, and endeavors to live the life which he had imagined, he will meet with a success unexpected in common hours. And I would just say a success unexpected in common hours for us, he will meet with a great adventure. So how about you guys? Here's what I want to do. I'm just going to go down this list, all right? Because now it's your turn. And I'm going to say before I die, I want to, and I'll do each one. And I want to, let's see. Come on, guys. It's going to take some courage, some energy, wake up. But I'm going to say B, and we're just going to go down the list. And I want to get 2 or 3. Just pop it out as loud as you can. And I'll repeat it because I want to get some juices flowing. This is your job in your small group. So we're kind of doing a small, large group here just to get started. And then you're going to take that energy forward in that whole thing. But I want to get that. And let me tell you, if you've got that energy, you'll be serving some guys. I told you some guys don't think like that. And there's going to be some guy, you're going to pop something out and go, that's it. Or I need to at least consider that. And he's going to steal your idea, which is great. So, before I die, I want to be
great husband and great dad.
Great dad. Pro wrestler. There we're going. One more. Come on. Pilot. Before I die, I want to do. Come on. What do you want to do? Fly around the world. Climb Kilimanjaro. One more. Machu Picchu. Perfect. Before I die, I want to have.
Kentucky Derby winner.
Kentucky Derby winner. Sweet. You selling chairs? Come on. What do I want to have? No Harleys in the room? What?
a car.
Oh, a car, McLaren. Sorry. Don't hear good. Any more? One more. What do you want to have?
Good hearing.
What? Good hearing. For you guys that don't, what he said was good hearing. Thanks. Before I die, I want to help. Come on.
My children find God.
My children find God. The disabled.
Those trying to help themselves.
Those that are trying to help themselves. Good. Before I die, this is great stuff, guys. Before I die, I want to enjoy. Come on. Family. I heard one somewhere. Grandkids. Come on. Somebody, I got the first guy, my first shipmate. All right. Yeah, that'll be our theme haircuts, a mullet. And before I die, I want to leave. Legacy, but here's what I'd say. Be specific. Okay, guys, be specific about this stuff. Everybody's going to leave a legacy. Huh? A good name.
No regrets. No regrets.
No regrets. All right. Man, that's good stuff, guys. And that's what we're talking about, bringing these ideas out. And it's okay to bring one out and go, yeah, that's not a very good one. You got to consider them all. But just having the idea is an important thing. Now, that's just a part of the battle, though. There's a lot of work left to do. Before I leave you this final quote and we break, remember, next week, we're not going to be here. You're welcome to come, but you're going to be here alone. And 2 weeks, though, from today, we're going to be back here for session 9. Let me finish with this quote from Mark Victor Hansen. He just says, by recording your dreams and goals on paper, you set in motion the process of becoming the person you most want to be. Put your future in good hands. See you next week, Scott.